Hi guys, it's Richard Lee Zhu. I'm a software engineer in Silicon Valley at a FAANG company, and in this video I'm going to explain why I think Alphabet Inc., which is the holding company for Google, is still a good buy in 2021. Let's get started. I'm going to start by prefacing that I don't work at Google, so I don't have any internal information, and this is not any insider information, so this is also not financial advice, so don't use any of this as financial advice. This is just my thoughts as a software engineer and an avid follower of the tech industry, using what I think about all these FAANG companies and why I think Google is a good buy in 2021. Let's get started. So first of all, importance factor. When you think about the importance factor of all the FAANG companies, so I'm excluding Facebook because I work there and I don't want to get into any trouble with my employer, but let's analyze the importance of all of these companies, right? So we have Google over here, and then we have Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple, right? These are kind of the biggest companies in tech, right? A proxy for the measurement of importance of a company is the market capitalization, right? Market capitalization is just the number of outstanding shares times the price per share, right? So the market cap right now for Google is $1.28 trillion. So 1.28, so that's thousand, million, billion, trillion. $1.28 trillion divided by this, right? So we know that there are about 674 million shares of Google floating around, right? Each at a value of around $1,900. So combining to a market cap of $1.28 trillion, right? So if you think about your daily life, which one of these companies is kind of the most important, right? I think a lot of you will realize that Google is the most important, right? I go to Google for all my search queries, right? I use Gmail, I use all of Google services, Google Drive. They've done a great job of democratizing the Office suite, right? Before you had to go to Microsoft for Microsoft Office and you had to pay Microsoft, right? But Google provides all of these services for free, right? Even using an iPhone, I still use mostly Google software on my iPhone. Apple software is pretty notoriously bad, like Apple Maps, it's a joke. So I use Google Maps, big fan of all of their software, right? Importantly, they have Android as well. If you think of the two big players in the mobile phone operating system market, you have Android on one side with over 90% market share, and on the other side you have Apple, right? So since we're on the topic of Apple, let's see what Apple's market cap is, right? So keep in mind, Google's market cap here is at $1.28 trillion. Apple's market cap is $2.4 trillion. Now, do you really think that Apple is worth twice that of Google? So I'm not so sure that that is the case. Like, I don't think that Apple should be priced in such a way, right? I think that there's some discrepancy here. Either Apple is overvalued or Google is undervalued, right? That's what I think. And if we look at Amazon is also valued higher than Google, right? Microsoft is also valued higher. And so I think a lot of the reason I think Microsoft is priced so highly is because of their business-facing market, and due to Microsoft Azure, their artificial intelligence division, I think they are priced in to have market dominance. So I think Microsoft may be a little bit overpriced, at least from a consumer standpoint, right? I know they do a lot of business B2B work, but I think just in the consumer importance, I think Google is a little bit undervalued here. Either Google is undervalued or everything else is overvalued, right? So I still think they're definitely a great buy, right? Let's take a deeper dive look into the financials, right? So right now we have the estimates. So here are the estimates for Google's next quarterly report, which is going to happen on February 2nd, 2021, right? So the average estimate for the earnings per share is $15.9 per share. If we take a look at the earnings per share trend over time, people are realizing that the earnings per share is actually going to be a huge blowout. Like, because of COVID, the importance of Google, of all these FAANG companies, has been magnified, right? I think that people, without being able to go out to spend their money, a lot of people are spending a lot of time online. So people advertisers, they will flock to Google and online platforms in order to sell their products, right? And with a lot of stimulus floating around, there's a lot of money to be given to Google's advertising business, right? So analysts are realizing this. I, as an insider, kind of have more of a feel of like how strong of these companies are, and I believe that Google is super strong fundamentally as a company, right? If we look at their, so one thing that people often look at to determine whether or not a company is overvalued is they look at the PE ratio, right? If you look at Google's PE ratio, it's 36, right? For a company overall, that's like relatively high. Among tech, that's fine, right? If you look at Amazon's PE ratio, 96. That means for every dollar of earnings on Amazon, you're paying $96 in the stock price, right? That's super high. Compared with Microsoft's 37 here, that's also good, right? That's just slightly a little bit worse than Google, right? Apple here, 43. So, I mean, the numbers are here. I think that Apple is propped up by a lot of their avid, very fervent fan base. Like a lot of people, they view Apple as a luxury product, but I don't believe that Apple is actually providing that much value to you as a consumer, right? Like they have great products. I'm not gonna lie, I use a lot of their products. I have a MacBook here and an iPhone here, but as a consumer who is value conscious, I never really was able to get behind Apple's products because the value proposition is not there, right? They have great products, but they're super overpriced. And this overpricing is kind of why they're able to get such a great valuation, right? They can charge so much money for their products and their fans are willing to pay it, right? Even I'm willing to pay it. So I just don't think they should be this valuable though, compared to Google, right? They should not be, I don't think they should be twice the price of Google. So I think people, once the quarterly report comes out in February, people will realize how strong fundamentally Google is. And I think the price of Google will skyrocket. I think 2000 easy. 2021, I think, is going to be a big year for Google stock. So, none of this is based on insider information. I do have friends that work at Google, but I don't ask them for this stuff. This is all just what I think as a complete outsider to Google, right? If we look at companies such as Apple, and we look at their revenue versus their profit, let's take a look at Apple's profit, right? Apple's profit was $100 billion in the quarter ending on September 30th, 2020, right? $105 billion. Google's profit is $90 billion, which is like almost 90% of Apple's profit. So yeah, if we take a look at the financials between Apple and Google, I know which company I'd much rather be investing in, right? So I think there's definitely room for Apple to grow as well. There could be a correction coming, but if you want your money in the market, I think these two, are going to be solid bets, but Google especially, right? So if we look at the revenue, right? The revenue for Google is almost half, but their profit, which is how much money they're making, is like 90% of Apple's profit, right? That's because Google is in the online advertisement space, which there's a much higher profit margin than even Apple, who's in a who's basically makes like 100% of the profit within the smartphone space, right? Traditionally, a lot of other smartphone manufacturers operate at a loss even compared to Apple, which operates at huge margins. So Apple is making $105 billion to Google's $90 billion. But the thing is, if you look at Google's growth is fantastic, right? 65 billion in 2017, 77 billion, now 89 billion. I think with everything that's happened and the amount of inflation that's happened, I think their year-over-year growth is going to be huge. I'm calling that now. You guys can comment down below later after February if I'm wrong, but that's kind of my prediction for Google, right? Whereas if we look at Apple, 2018 was a very strong year for them, $102 billion, but then they dropped in 2019. Whereas their stock doesn't reflect that, right? 2018, let's look, their stock price was 57, 56, and they've grown 150% since that time, right? Whereas let's take a look at Google. In 2018, their stock has only grown 55%. So I remember there was a time when Google was the most valuable company. I think that was around this time actually. And in that time, Apple has grown 155%. And Google has grown 55%, right? So think about why and where that extra 100% is coming from. I think it's just a little bit based on hype. There's a lot of like negative news about Google happening recently, and so I think that's all a factor. And I think that's how you can get Google stock at like a major discount. So I'm not as confident as how Google compares against Amazon and Microsoft, because I think Google is more important, but Amazon is also super important. Microsoft also has a strong business to B2B business. Here's just a video on my thoughts on why Google and Alphabet are still very strong buys in 2021. I think better buys than Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So, you know, if you like this kind of financial video detailing a software engineer's thoughts, just subscribe to this channel for more of this content coming your way, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.